A deafening slap cracks through Horizon Airlines Flight 927 to Seattle. Captain Leonard Hayes' hand stinging Amara Brooks's cheek, her head whipping back as passengers gasp in frozen shock. Phones flash, capturing his smug grin. Certain he's tamed a problem. He's clueless. Amara, a black woman he pegged as nothing, is Seattle's police chief, and this brutal strike ignites a firestorm that torches his career, his world, and a prejudice system, reshaping their lives forever. What happens when his arrogance meets her hidden power? Hey, where are you watching from? If you stand for justice, hit like, subscribe, and join us for more epic showdowns. Amara Brooks stood in her quiet Seattle apartment, the pre-dawn glow filtering through the blinds, casting soft shadows across the hardwood floor. For 22 years, she'd risen at 4:15 every morning, the sharp buzz of her alarm yanking her into the relentless rhythm of duty as the city's first black female police chief. Today, though, was different. She'd swapped her crisp uniform, with its polished stars and stiff collar, for a faded pair of jeans, a loose gray hoodie, and worn sneakers, the kind of outfit that blended into any crowd. No badge pinned to her chest, no holster at her hip. She was heading to Portland International Airport, bound for a national law enforcement summit in Seattle, a 3-day gathering of the country's top brass to dissect crime trends and policy reforms. This time she'd travel as a civilian, just another face in the sea of passengers, savoring a rare chance to shed the weight of her title. She glanced at her reflection in the hallway mirror, her tight braids pulled back into a low bun, her brown eyes steady but tired, and muttered, "One weekend without the spotlight." Her fingers brushed the edge of her carry-on, a sleek black roller bag, where she'd tucked her police chief's badge into a zippered pocket, hidden beneath a folded sweater. She wouldn't need it, she thought, zipping the bag shut with a quick tug. A notification pinged on her phone and she tapped the screen, squinting at the bright text from Horizon Airlines. "Congratulations, Amara Brooks. Your complimentary upgrade to first class on Flight 927 to Seattle is confirmed." A faint smile tugged at her lips. First class. A small luxury she hadn't expected when she'd booked the ticket 3 months ago using her personal credit card, not the department's budget. She slung the bag over her shoulder and headed out, locking the door behind her, unaware that this simple trip would spiral into a battle she'd never forget. 30 miles away, in the sterile glow of Horizon Airlines crew lounge at Portland International, Captain Leonard Hayes adjusted his pilot's cap, its gold embroidery glinting under the fluorescent lights. At 58, with a jawline carved from years of barking orders and a posture that demanded attention, he carried himself like a man who owned the sky. His 30 years helming cockpits had earned him a reputation as a stickler for control, a pilot who ran his flights like a military operation, tolerating no dissent. Today, he stood before his crew for Flight 927, a Boeing 737 set to depart at 10:30, his voice low and gravelly as he addressed them. Flight attendant Carla Evans, a wiry woman with sharp cheekbones and a silver Horizon pin gleaming on her navy blazer, leaned in close, her notepad poised. "Listen up," Hayes said, his steel gray eyes flicking across the room. "We've got a full manifest, and I've noticed a trend lately. The airline's letting anyone into first class these days, people who don't fit the profile." He paused, letting the words sink in, his lips curling into a faint sneer. "It's our job to keep the riffraff out. First class is for a certain caliber of passenger, and I won't have it diluted on my watch." Carla nodded, her pen scratching. Quick notes, her hazel eyes glinting with understanding. She'd worked Hayes' flights for 6 years, long enough to decipher his code. Undesirables meant anyone who didn't match his narrow vision of wealth and privilege, a vision often tinted by skin color. "Don't worry, Captain," she replied, her voice smooth as glass. "I'll handle them if they try to sneak up front. We'll keep the standards intact." Hayes gave a curt nod, satisfied, and straightened his tie, the crisp white shirt beneath his jacket spotless. "Good. You're on first-class duty for a reason, Carla. You get it." Their quiet laughter rippled through the lounge, drawing uneasy glances from a young black mechanic and an Asian co-pilot across the room, who kept their heads down, knowing better than to challenge the unspoken rules. Meanwhile, Amara stepped into the buzzing chaos of Portland International's terminal. the air thick with the hum of rolling suitcases and hurried footsteps. She wove through the crowd, her carry-on trailing behind her, its wheels clicking against the tiled floor. At the far end of the departures hall, she spotted a Somali family, a mother in a vibrant orange hijab, a father juggling a toddler, and two older kids clutching backpacks, their faces etched with confusion as they stared at a digital directory. The screen flashed gate numbers and flight times, but their limited English left them stranded. The mother's brow furrowed as she traced a finger over unfamiliar words. Amara didn't hesitate. She approached with a warm smile, kneeling slightly, to meet the kid's eye level and asked in fluent Somali, "Sala, Maksadu Bahantahai? Hello, what do you need?" The family's relief was instant, tension melting from their shoulders as she translated the gate info, pointing them toward Terminal C with clear directions. The mother gripped Amara's hand, her gratitude spilling out in a rush of words. "Mahadsanid walal." "Thank you, sister." For a fleeting moment, Amara felt the old spark of why she'd joined the force, to bridge gaps in systems that ignored people like this family. She waved them off, watching them disappear into the throng, unaware that her kindness had drawn a different kind of attention. Captain Hayes strode through the terminal, his pilot's cap tucked under his arm, his polished shoes tapping a steady rhythm. He was en route to Gate 12, his chest puffed with the quiet arrogance of a man rarely questioned, when he caught sight of Amara with the Somali family. Her hoodie, her easy posture, her dark skin, it all registered in his mind as something out of place, a janitor or low-wage worker, not a passenger of note. He stopped short, his eyes narrowing as she straightened up, brushing off her knees. "Hey, you!" he called out, his voice slicing through the terminal din, sharp enough to turn heads. Amara turned, her expression calm but curious, meeting his gaze. "There's trash piling up by Gate 12, he snapped, pointing toward a crumpled coffee cup 20 feet away. "Clean it up now, it's been sitting there too long." His tone carried the weight of absolute expectation, as if her compliance was a foregone conclusion. Amara blinked, processing the absurdity, then replied evenly, "I'm not staff, I'm a passenger. No heat, no edge, just a plain correction." Hayes's lip twitched, a flicker of irritation crossing his weathered face. He stepped closer, looming over her, his 6'2" frame casting a shadow. "You don't look like first class to me," he muttered, loud enough for a nearby businessman to glance up from his phone. "Stay in your lane." With that, he pivoted on his heel and marched off, his cap now clamped tight under his arm, leaving the words to fester like an open wound. The Somali father, lingering nearby, shot Amara a look of silent sympathy, recognizing the sting of casual venom all too well. She took a slow breath, her years of de-escalation training kicking in, and let it slide, figuring it wasn't worth the fight. Not yet. 15 minutes later, Amara reached the security checkpoint, her carry-on gliding smoothly beside her. The line moved briskly for most, business travelers sliding laptops into bins with practiced ease. An elderly white couple waved through with friendly nods, a teenage boy with a bulging backpack of gadgets sailing past without a hitch. Amara stepped forward, placing her bag on the conveyor belt, its contents simple: 3 days' worth of clothes, a toiletry kit, Summit handouts, and a small leather journal she'd kept since her rookie days. The scanner hummed, the screen flashing green, no threats detected. She moved to retrieve it, expecting the usual nod to proceed, when a TSA agent, a burly man with a buzz cut and a badge reading Carter, barked, "Step aside, ma'am." His blue-gloved hand shot out, already yanking her bag off the belt. "Random screening," he said, his eyes darting anywhere but hers. Amara's jaw tightened, but she complied, stepping to the side as Carter began rifling through her belongings, with deliberate roughness. He upended her neatly packed clothes, spilling a silk blouse onto the grimy counter, unzipped her toiletry kit, and dumped out a tube of toothpaste, a comb, and a bottle of lotion, each item landing with a careless thud. "What's this?" he demanded, holding up her journal as if it were contraband, his voice booming to draw stares. "Just my notebook," she replied, her tone steady. refusing to give him the reaction he seemed to crave. Around her, white passengers flowed through, unchecked. A stark parade of privilege she couldn't unsee. A suited man with a Rolex, a woman with a designer purse, a kid with earbuds dangling. Random, Carter had said, but the word rang hollow, a flimsy shield for something uglier. From the expedited line 50 feet away, Captain Hayes watched, his arms crossed, a faint smirk tugging at his mouth as Carter tore into Amara's bag. He'd clocked her again after their terminal run-in, her face now etched in his mind as a problem to solve. "See?" he murmured to a co-pilot beside him, a younger man with a nervous tic who didn't respond. "Security knows who to check. They've got instincts for this sort of thing." The co-pilot forced a tight smile, saying nothing, his silence a tacit agreement Hayes didn't need to question. Carter finished, finding nothing, and shoved the bag back at Amara with a curt, "You're good." No apology, no effort to repack. The mess he'd made, just a quick retreat as if she'd wasted his time. She gathered her things, stuffing the blouse and journal back in, her fingers steady despite the quiet fury simmering beneath her skin. Hayes turned away, satisfied, his stride purposeful as he headed for the gate, already plotting his next move. For Amara, it was just the beginning. A first jab in a fight she didn't yet know was coming. One that would test every ounce of her strength and rewrite the rules of the game. Amara Brooks rolled her carry-on toward Gate 12, the Portland International Terminal buzzing around her like a hive on the brink of collapse. The digital board overhead blinked in bold green letters. Horizon Airlines Flight 927 to Seattle. On time. Boarding at 10:30. She adjusted her hoodie, the gray fabric still wrinkled from the security ordeal, and took a steadying breath, her pulse finally easing after Carter's invasive rummage. First class awaited, a small oasis after the morning's indignities, and she clutched her boarding pass, its crisp edges a quiet victory in her hand. The priority lane stretched ahead, a cluster of passengers with premium luggage and tailored coats exuding the effortless confidence of those used to being ushered ahead. She stepped into line, her sneakers silent against the polished floor, and approached the gate agent's podium, ready to leave the terminal's chaos behind. What could go wrong now, right? She handed her pass to Derek Sims, a lanky man with a pinched face and a silver Horizon Airlines pin glinting on his vest, expecting a quick scan and a nod. Instead, his eyes flicked up, then down, lingering on, her with a scrutiny that felt like a spotlight. He tilted his head, holding the pass as if it were a puzzle piece that didn't fit, and Amara caught a shadow moving nearby. Captain Leonard Hayes, his pilot's cap now perched atop his graying hair, watching from 10 feet away with a predator's focus. Derek's voice cut through the hum of the gate, loud and deliberate. "This looks suspicious." He turned the boarding pass over, inspecting it like a counterfeit bill, his fingers tracing the barcode as if it might smudge. Nearby passengers, a white woman with a Louis Vuitton tote and a balding man in a pinstripe suit, swiveled their heads, their curiosity piqued by the sudden drama. Amara kept her face neutral, years of facing down hostile suspects steadying her nerves, and asked, "Is there an issue?" Her tone was even, no hint of the irritation bubbling beneath. But Derek ignored her, his gaze darting to Hayes, who gave a subtle nod, a silent command passing between them like a current. "We need to verify this," Derek announced, his volume cranked up to ensure every ear within 20 feet caught the accusation. He tapped at his computer, the clack of keys exaggerated, glancing at Amara every few seconds with a skepticism so blatant it bordered on theatrical. She stood there, arms crossed, her carry-on resting by her feet, as 5 white passengers approached the podium after her, each flashing their passes and receiving a cursory glance, a warm, "Enjoy your flight," and a wave through. A blonde woman in heels sailed past, her pass barely scanned. A gray-haired man with a golf bag got a chuckle and a "safe travels." The contrast was a slap in itself, a silent chorus singing privilege while Amara waited, the only one singled out. How does that sit with you? Comment number 1 if you've ever been unfairly targeted like Amara, hit like if it fires you up, and subscribe to see her fight back. The delay stretched, seconds bleeding into minutes, and Derek's performance grew bolder. He held the pass up to the light, squinting as if it were written in invisible ink, then flipped it over again, drawing out the moment like a magician building to a trick. "This doesn't add up," he declared, his voice carrying a smug edge, inviting the growing cluster of onlookers to join his suspicion. A teenage girl in a denim jacket pulled out her phone, recording the scene, her friend whispering beside her. Amara's jaw tightened, but she stayed rooted, refusing to give him the reaction he fished for. "Can you tell me what's wrong?" she pressed, still calm, still measured, her words a lifeline to de-escalate. Derek's lips pursed, and he tapped the counter, ignoring her again, then raised his voice even louder. "I need a supervisor. Over here." The call echoed, heads turning, and the word fraud hovered unspoken, a ghost in the air attaching itself to Amara like a stain. Passengers shuffled, some craning their necks, others pretending not to notice, but the tension thickened. A web spun from nothing but Hayes' silent approval. Supervisor Lila Torres, a woman with a no-nonsense bob and 15 years at Horizon, strode over, her clipboard clutched tight. She took the pass from Derek, her eyes scanning the screen as her fingers flew across the keyboard with the efficiency of someone who'd untangled this mess before. "It's valid," she said, turning the monitor to show Derek. "First class, seat 1A, purchased 3 months ago. She's a platinum member." Her tone was flat, final, but Derek's face twisted, a flicker of disappointment flashing across it. "You sure?" he pushed, leaning in. "It doesn't seem right." The implication hung heavy. Some people didn't belong in first class, ticket or not, and Amara caught every word, her chest tightening as the insult landed. Lila shot Derek a look, sharp enough to cut glass, and handed Amara her pass. "You're good to go, ma'am," she said, a faint apology in her eyes. But before Amara could move, Hayes inserted himself, his boots clicking as he closed the distance. "Hold up," he barked, his voice dripping with manufactured concern. "There's an issue here." He snatched the pass from Lila's hand without asking, his authority a battering ram, and loomed over Amara, his 6'2" frame, casting her in shadow again. "We need to check your payment method," he demanded, his steel gray eyes boring into her. "These seats cost a fortune. How'd you get this?" The question was a blade, slicing through any pretense, assuming she couldn't afford it, that her presence demanded explanation. Amara met his stare, her voice steady as granite. "I paid with my own money. Not that it matters." A crack of defiance slipped through, the first hint of steel beneath her calm, and Hayes' lip curled, his control challenged. "Fraud's rampant," he snapped, thrusting the pass back at Lila. "Verify it again. That's an order." Lila hesitated, her professionalism warring with the absurdity. But Hayes' captain's stripes carried weight, and she tapped the keys again, the screen confirming it once more. 10 minutes ticked by, 10 minutes of Amara standing aside, her dignity a quiet fortress as other passengers boarded. 10 minutes of Hayes pacing, his smirk fading into a scowl as his plan faltered. Finally, Lila nodded. "It's clean. She's clear." Amara thought she'd won, a small triumph over petty tyranny, and stepped toward the jet bridge, her carry-on rolling behind her, ready to claim her seat. But Hayes wasn't done. As she crossed the threshold into the jet bridge, the narrow tunnel amplifying every sound, he followed, his boots thudding with purpose. "Wait," he called, his tone sharp enough to halt her mid-step. She turned, wary, and he pointed at her carry-on, a standard black roller no different from thousands others. "That bag's oversized," he declared, lunging forward and grabbing it with a yank that jolted her arm. "It's a security risk." The bag, the same one she'd carried on 92 flights over 4 years, the same one security had cleared, suddenly became his weapon. He jerked it open, the zipper ripping under his force, and her belongings spilled across the jet bridge floor, a cascade of humiliation in full view of boarding passengers. Her summit notes fluttered out, pages of handwritten stats on crime reduction, scattering like leaves, her silk blouse landing in a puddle of spilled soda, a pair of socks rolling toward the wall. "What's all this junk?" Hayes sneered, kicking a notebook aside with his polished shoe. "This proves you don't belong up front." Amara's breath caught, her hands clenching, But she knelt to gather her things, her movements deliberate, refusing to let him see her break. Passengers gawked, some filming, others whispering, and Hayes stood over her, triumphant, thinking he'd crushed her spirit. Ever had someone try to tear you down like that? Comment number 1 if you'd call out Hayes' power trip, like if you're rooting for Amara to turn the tables, and subscribe to catch her next move. What happens when she finally steps onto that plane, and Hayes realizes he's picked the wrong fight? Amara Brooks stepped onto Horizon Airlines Flight 927, the jet bridge's metallic clang fading behind her as she entered the first-class cabin, her carry-on trailing with a soft whir. The air inside was cool, tinged with the faint scent of leather, seats, and recycled oxygen, a stark contrast to the terminal's chaos. She located seat 1A, a window spot in the front row, the premium perch her upgrade had promised, and exhaled, a flicker of relief washing over her. After the security rummage, the gate delay, and Hayes' jet bridge assault on her bag, she'd made it. Her belongings, hastily repacked, sat disheveled in the roller at her feet, but she slid it under the seat ahead, keeping it close, a defensive instinct honed by the morning's violations. She settled in, her hoodie sinking into the cushioned seat, her braids brushing the headrest as she adjusted her position, the window framing a sliver of Portland's gray tarmac. For a moment, she thought the worst was over, that she could reclaim this small slice of peace, her fingers brushing the armrest as the cabin hummed with pre-flight bustle. Passengers shuffled in, stowing bags overhead, their murmurs a low drone. But Amara kept her eyes forward, her composure a shield forged from decades of facing down chaos. She didn't see Captain Leonard Hayes storming down the aisle, his boots pounding the carpet, his face a mask of fury, until he loomed over her, his shadow swallowing the light. "This seat's reserved for real first-class passengers," Hayes barked, his voice slicing through the cabin's hum, loud enough to jolt the businessman in 1C from his newspaper. Amara looked up, her brown eyes meeting his steel-gray glare, and pulled her boarding pass from her hoodie pocket, holding it out, with a steady hand. "This is my assigned seat," she said, her tone calm, factual, the same measured cadence she'd used to correct him in the terminal. The pass gleamed under the overhead lights, seat 1A printed in bold, her name unmistakable. But Hayes didn't glance at it. His lip curled, his 6'2" frame tensing as if her presence were a personal affront. "You're in the wrong place," he snapped, stepping closer, his polished shoe nudging her carry-on. "Move!" Amara didn't flinch, her years as police chief steeling her against bluster, and tucked the pass back into her pocket, her voice unwavering. "I'm staying. This is my seat." The words were simple, a quiet defiance that struck Hayes like a match to dry grass. His face flushed, a vein pulsing at his temple, and he leaned in, his breath hot with rage. "You're disruptive," he growled, his hand shooting out to grab her arm, fingers digging into her sleeve. The cabin stilled, passengers freezing mid-motion, a woman in 2B clutching her purse, a kid in 3A peering over his seat. Amara pulled her arm free with a sharp twist, her training kicking in, and fixed him with a level stare. "Don't touch me," she said, her voice firm but controlled, a boundary drawn in stone. The command hit Hayes like a slap of his own, his authority challenged for the third time that day, first in the terminal, then at the gate, now here, in his domain. His eyes widened, then narrowed, a storm brewing behind them, and he straightened, towering over her. "Know your place," he roared, his right hand swinging in a sudden violent arc, striking her cheek with a crack that echoed off the cabin walls. Her head snapped back, pain exploding across her face, a red welt blooming where his palm had landed. The cabin erupted, gasps ricocheting, a man in 1D dropping his coffee, brown liquid splashing the floor, a woman in 2C yanking out her phone, the camera's red dot blinking to life. Amara's hand flew to her cheek, the sting sharp and hot, but she didn't cry out, her composure a fortress even as her vision blurred for a split second. Hayes stood there, chest heaving, a smug grin creeping across his face, certain he'd reasserted control, oblivious to the dozen lenses now trained on him, capturing every frame of his unraveling. Flight attendant Carla Evans materialized at his side, her navy blazer crisp, her face a mask of rehearsed concern. She lunged at him. Carla lied, her voice loud and clear, aimed at the passengers now whispering in shock. I saw it. She's a threat. The words were a lifeline for Hayes, a script they'd played before, and he nodded, pointing at Amara as she sat, still dazed, her cheek throbbing. Call security, he ordered, his tone clipped, authoritative, as if the slap were a footnote to her supposed crime. Amara blinked, the pain sharpening her focus, and thought, they'll see through this. The videos, the witnesses, they'll sort it out. She stayed seated, hands visible on the armrests, a habit from years of de-escalating volatile scenes, waiting for reason to prevail. 2 security officers burst through the aircraft door, their navy uniforms stark against the cabin's muted tones, their radios crackling with static. The senior officer, a stocky man with a buzz cut named Reese, scanned the scene, his brow furrowing at the sight of Amara, calm and unmoving, and Hayes, red-faced and pacing. What's the problem? Reese asked, his hand resting on his belt. Hayes jabbed a finger at Amara. She assaulted me, disrupted my flight. Remove her now. Carla nodded, backing him up. She's aggressive, a risk to everyone. Reese hesitated, his eyes flicking to Amara, who sat with a quiet dignity that didn't match the accusation, but Hayes's captain's stripes carried weight, and the officer's training leaned toward compliance. Ma'am, we need you to come with us, he said, stepping forward, his partner pulling out handcuffs with a metallic clink. Amara's stomach dropped, but she rose slowly, her movements deliberate, expecting a chance to explain once they were off the plane. This is a mistake, she said, her voice steady despite the ache in her face, but Reese grabbed her wrist, snapping the cuffs on with a cold snap, the steel biting into her skin. Passengers murmured, some filming, others turning away, and Hayes crossed his arms, his grin widening as they dragged her toward the door. Her carry-on stayed behind, abandoned under the seat, and she stumbled once, the cuffs throwing off her balance, but kept her head high, her mind racing. They'll check the footage, call my precinct. This'll clear up fast. The jet bridge loomed ahead, the officer's grips tight, and Hayes followed, his boots thudding, gloating as they hauled her away, certain he'd won. The cabin buzzed behind them, phones still rolling, a storm brewing he couldn't yet see. But Amara's hope held firm, a lifeline she clung to as the aircraft door slammed shut, sealing her brief taste of victory into a nightmare she hadn't foreseen. Amara Brooks sat on a hard metal bench in the airport's holding room, the cuffs finally off, her wrists raw and red from their bite. The space was a stark box, gray walls scuffed with years of wear, a single fluorescent bulb buzzing overhead, casting a harsh glare on the linoleum floor. Her cheek still throbbed from Hayes's slap, a dull ache pulsing beneath the welt. But she kept her posture straight, her hands resting on her knees, her hoodie stretched tight across her shoulders. The 2 security officers, Reese and his younger partner Lopez, stood by the door, their radios silent now, their faces uneasy as they avoided her gaze. She'd been dragged off Flight 927 minutes ago. Hayes's smug grin burned into her memory, and she'd waited, expecting protocol to kick in, for someone to check the passenger videos, to see the truth. The door swung open, and Reese stepped forward, his buzz cut catching the light. We need your ID, he said, his voice clipped, professional but tinged with doubt. Amara reached into her hoodie pocket, her fingers brushing past the crumpled boarding pass, and pulled out her wallet. Flipping it open to reveal the gold shield of Seattle's police chief, her name etched in bold, Amara Brooks. She held it up steady, letting it speak for her, and the room froze, a ripple of shock widening Reese's eyes, Lopez's jaw dropping slightly as he leaned in to confirm. Reese snatched the badge, turning it over as if it might be fake, then handed it back, his posture stiffening. Chief Brooks, he muttered, the title a sudden weight, and uncuffed her with a quick twist, the steel clattering to the bench. We didn't know. This changes things. Lopez radioed for a supervisor, his voice low, urgent, and within minutes, a gray-suited airport official, Ms. Hargrove, bustled in, her clipboard trembling in her hands. We're so sorry, Chief, she stammered, her glasses slipping down her nose. We'll get Captain Hayes in here to explain. Amara nodded, rubbing her wrists, thinking, "This is it. They'll see his lie. Sort this out." Hargrove dialed the gate, and Hayes's voice crackled through a speakerphone, sharp and unrepentant. "She assaulted me first," he claimed, his tone dripping with conviction. "I slapped her in self-defense after she grabbed my arm. Check the report I just filed." Amara's stomach twisted, the lie so bold it stunned her, but she stayed silent, trusting the passenger footage, the dozen phones that had caught every second. Hargrove pulled up the security feed on a tablet, the slap replaying in grainy clarity. Hayes's hand swinging unprovoked, Amara seated, unmoving. "This contradicts him," Hargrove said, her brow furrowing, and Reese nodded. "Witnesses back her up too." Amara exhaled, relief flooding her, believing justice was near. Hargrove typed rapidly, her fingers a blur, and turned to Amara. "You're free to go, Chief. We'll handle this internally." They escorted her out. Her carry-on returned, still a mess from the jet bridge spill, and she stepped into the terminal, the bustle swallowing her again. She thought she'd dodged the worst, that Hayes's bluff would collapse under the evidence, and booked a hotel room across town, a sleek high-rise with a view of Portland's skyline, planning to catch a later flight. Horizon Airlines sent an email. "We regret the incident on Flight 927. Your travel privileges are under review pending investigation." A sting she brushed off, assuming it was routine. She checked in, the clerk smiled tight, and rode the elevator to the 10th floor. Her room a quiet refuge with a king bed and floor-to-ceiling windows. She unpacked, laying out her summit notes, the pages creased but intact, and sank into a chair, the city lights flickering below. For a moment, she felt safe, the ordeal receding like a bad dream, her badge a shield that had finally worked. She didn't hear the sirens until they were close, a wail cutting through the night, red and blue flashes bouncing off the glass. The door burst open, 4 Portland PD officers storming in, guns drawn, their shouts overlapping. "Hands up! Amara Brooks, you're under arrest!" She froze, her heart slamming against her ribs, and raised her hands, the summit notes fluttering, to the carpet. "What's this about?" she demanded, her voice steady despite the chaos. But the lead officer, a wiry man with a scar over his eyebrow, barked, "You're a fugitive, assault on a pilot, fleeing the scene." Her mind raced, connecting the dots to Hayes, and she stood, hands still high. "I'm Seattle's police chief, check my ID, call my precinct." The officer hesitated, his gun lowering an inch. But his partner, a rookie with twitchy fingers, grabbed her wallet from the table, flipping it open to the badge. "She's legit," the rookie muttered, but the lead officer scowled. "Doesn't matter. We've got a warrant straight from Horizon's complaint." They cuffed her again, tighter this time, the metal digging deeper, and ransacked the room, flipping the mattress, shattering a lamp, seizing her badge as evidence. Her carry-on hit the floor, socks and toothpaste spilling out again, a cruel echo of the jet bridge. They hauled her to a squad car, the hotel lobby gawking as she passed, her hoodie hood falling back, exposing the welt on her cheek. At the station, a concrete bunker lit by flickering bulbs, she sat in an interrogation room, the cuffs chaining her to a table. A detective, a balding man with a coffee-stained tie, slid a file across. "Incident report. Assault on Captain Leonard Hayes. He says you attacked him, fled after security let you go," the detective said, tapping the page. "Says you're a flight risk." Amara's jaw clenched, the lie growing teeth, and she leaned forward. "There's video. Passengers recorded it. He slapped me, unprovoked." The detective shrugged. "Horizon's backing him. Says you're suspended from flying, pending felony charges." She blinked, the weight sinking in, her brief freedom a mirage. Then a screen flickered on, Hayes's face filling it via video call, his pilot's cap off, his grin vicious. "You'll never fly again," he sneered, his voice a blade through the static. "Should have stayed out of my cabin." The detective nodded as if Hayes's word were gospel, and Amara realized the system wasn't bending. It was breaking her. Amara Brooks stepped out of the Portland police station into a drizzle-soaked dawn, the cuffs gone, her wrists still bruised from the night's chaos. Her hoodie clung to her shoulders, damp from the rain, and her carry-on rolled beside her, its handle slick in her grip. The detective had released her hours ago, the hotel raid unraveling when passenger videos from Flight 927 hit the precinct's inbox. A flood of shaky footage showing Hayes' slap, her calm restraint, his lie exposed. Her badge was back in her pocket, retrieved from the evidence locker, its weight a quiet anchor as she hailed a cab to a new hotel. This one a modest brick building on the city's edge, far from the high-rise's shattered peace. The news broke as she checked in, her phone buzzing with alerts. Seattle police chief assaulted on flight, captain's claims disputed. Viral clips spread across social media, the slap replaying in loops, hashtags like Justice for Amara trending as strangers raged at Hayes' brutality. She sank onto the stiff mattress, the room's beige walls closing in, and scrolled through the posts, her welted cheek a silent star in every frame. For once, she thought, the truth was winning, the public's fury a shield against Hayes' fraud. She called her deputy, Marcus Tate, briefing him to prep a statement for the summit, her voice steady despite the exhaustion creeping in. Maybe this would bury Hayes, end his reign before it spiraled further. Across town, in a sleek Horizon Airlines office overlooking the airport, Captain Leonard Hayes hunched over a laptop, his pilot's jacket slung over a chair, his face a storm of defiance. The videos were everywhere, his slap a career-ending echo, but he didn't flinch. He dialed a contact, a sleazy tabloid editor named Vince Rawls, his voice low and venomous. "I've got something for you," Hayes said, uploading a file from his phone, a doctored clip pieced together from unrelated security footage, showing Amara lunging at him in a grainy blur, her face swapped in with crude edits. "Run? This. She attacked me, abused her power. I'm the victim here." Rawls chuckled. "This'll sell. Give me 2 hours." By noon, the headline screamed across screens. Police chief's violent outburst caught on tape. Hayes' allies, a network of airline cronies and online trolls, flooded platforms with the fake branding Amara a corrupt cop who'd framed an innocent pilot. Comments poured in. "She's a thug with a badge. Typical power trip," drowning out the real footage with orchestrated noise. Protests erupted outside her Seattle precinct, a dozen picketers waving signs. "Fire Amara Brooks." Her phone lit up with text from the summit organizers, speech canceled due to controversy. She stared at the screen, her brief triumph crumbling, the public's roar now a weapon turned against her. Amara didn't sit still. She grabbed her laptop, the hotel's Wi-Fi sluggish but enough, and uploaded her own video, a raw statement recorded on her phone, the welt still vivid on her cheek. "I'm Chief Amara Brooks," she began, her voice cutting through the room's silence. "Captain Hayes assaulted me, lied about it, and now he's twisting the truth. Here's what really happened." She spliced in the clearest passenger clip, the slap unedited, her restraint undeniable, and posted it to every platform, tagging news outlets, her precinct, even Horizon Airlines. Shares spiked, thousands at first, then tens of thousands, the tide shifting as voices rallied. "This is the real story. Hayes is done." She leaned back, her breath steadying, thinking she'd regained the upper hand, that the mob's anger would swing back to her side. The hotel window framed a gray sky, rain tapping a soft rhythm, and she allowed herself a flicker of hope, a belief that truth could still cut through the lies. Then her phone rang, an unknown number, and she answered, expecting a reporter. Instead, Hayes' voice slithered through. "You think you're smart, huh? Check the news." She flipped on the TV, the screen blazing with a breaking alert. Seattle. Police chief sues pilot for defamation. Hayes countersues for $10 million. Hayes stood in a press room at Horizon's headquarters, his pilot's cap back on, his face a mask of wounded dignity as cameras flashed. "Amara Brooks has ruined my spotless 30-year career," he declared, his voice trembling with fake emotion. "She staged this to smear me, a hard-working pilot, because I wouldn't bow to her ego. I'm suing for defamation, paying everything she's cost me." Reporters scribbled. Live feeds beamed his crocodile tears nationwide, and Horizon's PR team nodded behind him, backing their star despite the evidence. The countersuit hit Amara like a freight train, $10 million a ludicrous sum meant to crush her, to paint her as the aggressor in a war she hadn't started. Her hotel room felt smaller, the walls pressing in, and she gripped the remote. The screen now splitting between her video and his presser, a dueling narrative splitting the public. Her inbox flooded with hate mail. "You're a disgrace. Pay up. Liar." While supporters fought back, "She's the hero here." The summit cancellation stung anew. Her chance to shape policy lost to his venom. And she realized Hayes wasn't just fighting to save face, he was out to destroy her life. What would you do if the world turned on you like that? Comment number 1 if you'd stand with Amara against Hayes' lies. Hit like if his dirty tricks make your blood boil. And subscribe to see her claw her way out of this mess. How far will Hayes go when her counterattack starts hitting home? Amara Brooks sat in her Portland hotel room, the faint hum of the air conditioner cutting through the silence as she pored over legal papers, her laptop glowing on the desk. The countersuit from Hayes, a $10 million dagger, loomed large, but the tide was shifting. Her video had gone viral, racking up 2 million views, and passenger testimonies poured in, a dozen from Flight 927 emailing her precinct with detailed accounts. He slapped her out of nowhere. She never lunged. He's lying. She'd countersued Hayes that morning, filing for assault and defamation. Her attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Elise Tran, assuring her the evidence was airtight. Amara sipped lukewarm coffee from a paper cup, the bitter taste grounding her, and called her deputy, Marcus Tate, in Seattle. "Get these statements to the press," she said, her voice firm, despite the fatigue tugging at her edges. "We're burying him," Marcus agreed, his tone a mix of pride and urgency, and within hours, headlines flipped. Passengers corroborate chief's story. Pilot's lies unravel. She leaned back, the chair creaking, feeling the momentum, a rare surge of control after days of chaos. Hayes' smear was cracking, his doctored video debunked by experts on live TV, and she thought, he's cornered now. This might end it. Across the state line in Seattle, Captain Leonard Hayes paced a dimly lit motel room, the neon vacancy sign buzzing outside the cracked window. His pilot's uniform hung limp on a chair, replaced by a rumpled black sweater, his face haggard, but his eyes burning with defiance. The news played on a muted TV, Amara's face dominating the screen, her counterattack gaining ground, and he slammed a fist on the table, a half-empty whiskey bottle rattling. He wasn't done, not by a mile. His career teetered, Horizon's support wavering under public pressure, but surrender wasn't in his blood. He grabbed his burner phone, dialing a contact from his airline days, a gruff ex-cargo handler named Tony Gresham with a rap sheet and a grudge. "I need a job done," Hayes growled, his voice low. "Her kid, Jamal Brooks, freshman at UW, plant something in his dorm, make it stick." Tony grunted agreement, pocketing a wad of cash Hayes had wired, and within hours a baggie of cocaine, laced with enough fentanyl to kill, was slipped into Jamal's desk drawer at his University of Washington dorm, a quiet brick building overlooking Lake Washington. Amara's phone rang at dusk, Marcus's name flashing, and she answered, expecting good news. "Chief, it's Jamal," he said, his voice tight. "Police raided his dorm, found drugs. They've got him in custody." Her heart stopped, the room tilting, and she gripped the desk, coffee spilling across her papers. "That's impossible," she snapped, her mind racing. "He's clean, Marcus. This is Hayes." She hung up, booking the next flight to Seattle, a red-eye on a rival airline, her hands shaking as she stuffed her carry-on. She landed at SeaTac at 3 in the morning, the terminal a ghost town, and raced to the precinct, her badge flashing, to bypass security. Jamal sat in a holding cell, his lanky frame slumped, his college hoodie torn from the arrest, his eyes red but defiant. "Mom, I didn't do it," he said, gripping the bars, and she nodded, her throat tight. "I know. Baby, I'll fix this." She pulled strings, demanding dorm security footage, and by dawn, grainy video showed a stranger, Tony, slipping into Jamal's room, planting the drugs during a study break. The precinct released him, charges dropped, and Amara hugged him in the lobby, his trembling frame against hers, thinking she'd saved him, that Hayes' latest stab had missed its mark. They drove to her Seattle home, a 2-story Craftsman in Rainier Valley. its porch light flickering as dawn broke. Jamal crashed on the couch, exhaustion claiming him, and Amara sat at the kitchen table, her laptop open, drafting a press release to expose Hayes' frame job. She thought she'd turned the tide again, her family safe, her fight renewed. Then the air shifted, a sharp whiff of gasoline cutting through the morning stillness, and she bolted upright, her cop instincts screaming. Before she could move, a roar erupted outside, flames licking up the front of the house, glass shattering as a Molotov cocktail smashed through the living room window. Fire raced across the hardwood, swallowing the curtains, the couch where Jamal slept moments ago, and she yelled, "Jamal, get out!" He stumbled up, coughing as she grabbed a fire extinguisher from the kitchen, spraying foam at the blaze, but it spread too fast, a wall of heat driving them back. They burst through the back door, smoke billowing, and collapsed in the yard, the house groaning as flames devoured it. Sirens wailed, neighbors spilling onto lawns, and Amara shielded Jamal, her eyes scanning the inferno for answers. A note fluttered down from the oak tree above, singed but legible, landing at her feet. "Back off or he's next." Her blood ran cold, Hayes' hand unmistakable, his retaliation a sledgehammer after she'd cleared Jamal. Firefighters arrived, hoses blasting, but the house was gone, a smoldering skeleton by sunrise, her summit notes, her clothes, decades of memories reduced to ash. Jamal coughed beside her, his face streaked with soot, and she pulled him close, her resolve hardening even as her world burned. Police cordoned off the scene, detectives swarming, and she pointed to the note, her voice ablade. "This is Leonard Hayes. He's targeting my son." The lead investigator, a grizzled woman named Detective Ortiz, bagged the paper, nodding grimly. "We'll trace it, Chief. This is arson, attempted murder." Amara stood, her hoodie singed, her cheeks welt now a faint shadow against the soot, and stared at the wreckage, knowing Hayes wouldn't stop, that her small victory had unleashed. A monster willing to burn everything she loved to keep her down. Amara Brooks stood amidst the charred ruins of her Seattle home, the acrid stench of smoke clinging to her singed hoodie, her sneakers crunching on shards of glass and ash. Dawn painted the sky a bruised purple, firefighters coiling hoses as Detective Ortiz bagged the threatening note. "Back off, or he's next." Its words a venomous thread tying Hayes to the arson. Jamal leaned against her, his college sweatshirt streaked with soot, his breath ragged from the night's terror, but alive. She'd rallied her precinct by phone, her voice cutting through exhaustion, demanding a task force to nail Hayes. "He's gone too far," she told Marcus Tate, her deputy of 8 years, a black man she'd mentored from rookie to second in command. "Get forensics on the house, trace that note, issue warrants, we end this now." Marcus's baritone crackled through, steady and sure. "On it, Chief. We've got your back." By noon, lab results confirmed gasoline traces matching a batch sold near Hayes' last known motel, and Ortiz secured arrest warrants, the net tightening. Amara felt a surge of momentum, her team a fortress against Hayes' chaos, and she thought, "He's finished. We've got him cold." She relocated to a safe house, a nondescript duplex on Seattle's outskirts, its beige curtains drawn tight. Jamal bunked in a spare room under guard. She met Marcus there, his broad frame filling the doorway, his uniform crisp despite the late hour. "Warrants are out," he said, handing her a tablet with the arson report, his dark eyes meeting hers with a familiar trust. "SWAT's prepping to hit his motel tonight." Amara nodded, scanning the data, her mind mapping the takedown. She scheduled a press conference for 6, a public strike to reclaim her narrative, and Marcus drafted her statement. "Hayes targeted? My family. But justice is coming." At 5:30, she stood before a podium in the precinct's briefing room, cameras flashing, her hoodie swapped for a blazer, her welt fading, but her resolve blazing. "Captain Leonard Hayes assaulted me, framed my son and burned my home," she declared, her voice a steady drumbeat. "We have evidence, warrants, and the will to stop him." Reporters scribbled. Live feeds beamed her words nationwide, and she stepped away, thinking she'd landed a knockout blow, that Hayes' empire was crumbling under her counterattack. But Hayes wasn't idle. He'd slipped the motel hours before. SWAT's raid, a tip from an inside source giving him the jump. In a rented warehouse 10 miles south, its rusted walls cloaked by dusk, he paced, his burner phone buzzing with updates. Marcus Tate, Amara's trusted deputy, had sold her out, pocketing $20,000 from Hayes' slush fund to leak her strategy. Hayes smirked, dialing a crew of hired muscle, ex-airline grunts with loyalty to cash. "Plant a gun in her car," he ordered, his voice a hiss. "Make it quick." By 5:45, as Amara spoke to the press, a snub-nosed revolver, wiped clean but loaded, was slipped under the driver's seat of her precinct-issued SUV, parked in the lot outside. She finished her speech, adrenaline pumping, and walked to the vehicle, keys jangling, unaware of the trap. She slid in, the leather creaking, and started the engine, planning to check on Jamal, when sirens erupted, squad cars screeching to a halt around her, lights blinding. Officers swarmed, guns drawn, shouting, "Out of the car, hands up!" Her pulse spiked, confusion warring with instinct, and she complied, stepping onto the asphalt, her hands raised high. The lead cop, a beefy sergeant named Callahan, yanked. "Open her door," his flashlight sweeping the interior, and pulled out the revolver, holding it aloft like a trophy. "Weapon found," he bellowed, his voice carrying to the lingering press, cameras pivoting to catch the twist. "Amara Brooks, you're under arrest for threatening a pilot with a firearm." She froze, the accusation a gut punch, and shook. Her head. "That's not mine. Check it. It's a plant." Callahan ignored her, slapping cuffs on, the steel colder than before, and dragged her back inside, the press frenzy exploding behind her. In the interrogation room, a steel box with a flickering bulb, she sat chained again, her blazer rumpled, as Callahan tossed the gun on the table. "Your prints will be all over this," he said, smirking. But Amara stared him down. "Run it. You'll see." Hours later, a lab tech confirmed no prints, no match, and her attorney, Elise, stormed in, securing bail by midnight, the setup too flimsy to hold. Amara walked free, her SUV impounded, thinking she dodged another bullet, that Hayes' latest stab had failed. She confronted Marcus at the safe house, dawn breaking over the duplex, her fists clenched as she faced him in the cramped kitchen. "You leaked it," she said, her voice low, lethal, the betrayal a knife in her ribs. Marcus flinched, his broad shoulders slumping, and dropped his gaze, the tablet trembling in his hands. "He offered me cash, Amara. I messed up, thought it'd just delay things, not this." Tears streaked his face, his confession raw, and she wanted to scream, to shatter the trust they'd built. But she turned away, her breath ragged. "Get out," she whispered, and he fled, the door slamming, leaving her alone with Jamal's soft snores from the next room. She thought it was over, that Marcus's exit cut the last thread Hayes could pull. Then her phone buzzed, an unknown number, and she answered, steeling herself. A muffled voice rasped, "Check the news, Chief." She flipped on the TV, the screen flashing a breaking alert. "Deputy Marcus Tate found dead. Chief Brooks suspect." Her knees buckled, the remote slipping as footage showed Marcus's body in a ditch, beaten bloody. A staged scene Hayes had orchestrated overnight, kidnapping him after the confession, framing her for murder. Amara Brooks stood in the safehouse kitchen, the TV's glow casting jagged shadows across the linoleum, her breath shallow as the news blared Marcus Tate's death. His battered body sprawled in a ditch, her name, branded suspect. Her blazer, hung loose, soot-stained from the fire, and Jamal slept fitfully in the next room, guarded by a rookie cop she barely trusted. The precinct buzzed through her phone, Detective Ortiz's voice cutting through. "Marcus is alive, Chief. Found. Him an hour ago, beaten but breathing. Hayes staged it. Forced a confession claiming you ordered the hit." Relief surged, then curdled as Ortiz added, "We've got his trail, but he's gone dark." Amara's mind raced, piecing it together. Hayes' frame job exposed. Her name, cleared with Marcus's survival. She thought she'd dodged the bullet, that her team could regroup, hunt him down. She sank into a chair, the wood creaking, and dialed her attorney, Elise Tran, her voice steady, despite the tremor in her hands. "Get this out, Elise. Marcus alive means Hayes' lie falls apart. By dawn, press releases hit. Deputy's survival. Clears Chief Brooks. and she exhaled, believing the nightmare might lift, that she could reclaim her footing. Across Seattle, in a derelict office above a shuttered strip mall, Captain Leonard Hayes hunched over a laptop, his sweater stained with sweat, his burner phone discarded after Marcus's rescue botched his plan. He wasn't finished. His fingers flew across the keys, hacking into Horizon Airlines' system with a backdoor he'd kept from his pilot days, grounding 50 flights with a malicious code, schedules crashing, screens blinking red at SeaTac. He pinned it on Amara, forging digital fingerprints, emails from her precinct account ordering the sabotage, branding her a terrorist. By noon, the FAA issued an alert. Chief Brooks linked to airline chaos, her face plastered on every news ticker. A nationwide manhunt launched. Her safehouse phone rang. Ortiz again, her tone frantic. "Feds are coming, Chief. They think you're behind the shutdown. Run!" Amara grabbed Jamal, shoving essentials into her carry-on, the rookie cop bolting. As sirens wailed closer, they fled in a borrowed sedan, her heart pounding, weaving through backstreets as choppers thrummed overhead. Her name now a synonym for havoc, her brief clearance torched by Hayes' digital dagger. She ditched the car in an industrial park, its gravel lot crunching underfoot, and holed up in a friend's garage. A mechanic named Tyrell who'd owed her a favor since she'd cleared his brother's wrongful arrest. Tyrell handed her a burner phone, his grease-stained hand steady, and she hacked into precinct files, tracing Hayes' last signal to a warehouse south of Tacoma, 30 miles away. "He's there," she told Jamal, her voice a blade. "I'm ending this." She thought she'd turn the tables, confront him, drag him to justice herself. She kissed Jamal's forehead, leaving him with Tyrell, and drove a beat-up truck toward Tacoma. The sky a bruised gray, her resolve ironclad. She parked a mile out, trekking through overgrown lots, the warehouse's rusted shell looming, its windows blacked out. She slipped inside, the air thick with dust and oil, and spotted Hayes' silhouette hunched over a radio, taunting her through static. "You're finished, Chief." She crept closer, ready to cuff him, thinking she'd won, when floodlights blazed, blinding her, and 6 mercenaries in tactical gear burst from the shadows, rifles trained, a trap sprung with brutal precision. Amara dove behind a crate, her pulse hammering, splinters biting her palms as bullets chewed the wood. Hayes' voice crackled louder. "Thought you'd catch me. You're the prey now." The mercenaries fanned out, boots thudding, their leader, a scarred man with a buzz cut, barking orders. She crawled, her hoodie snagging on rusted bolts, and spotted a fire escape, her escape hatch. She lunged, dodging a hail of lead, her shoulder grazed, blood soaking her sleeve. But she reached the ladder, climbing as shots pinged steel. She hit the roof, rain slicking her face, and sprinted across, leaping to an adjacent building, her legs burning, the gap a heart-stopping drop she barely cleared. Below, the mercenaries regrouped, Hayes' voice fading. "Find her!" She stumbled into a stairwell, collapsing against the wall, her breath ragged, blood dripping, thinking she'd slipped his grasp. Ever been hunted for something you didn't do? Comment number 1 if you'd fight back like Amara, hit like if Hayes' cruelty shocks you, and subscribe to see her next stand. What happens when she turns the hunter, and Hayes' next move shakes the city? Amara Brooks slumped against the stairwell wall, rain drumming on the warehouse roof above, her shoulder oozing blood through the torn sleeve of her hoodie, the graze from the mercenary's bullet, a searing sting. Her chest heaved, breaths ragged. In the damp air, the burner phone trembling in her hand as she wiped sweat and grime from her face. She'd escaped Hayes' trap, barely, the echoes of gunfire still ringing in her ears. His taunt, "You're finished, Chief." A venomous loop in her mind. Below, the mercenary's boots thudded, searching. But she'd leapt the gap, her body screaming with every move, and now she crouched in shadows, alive, defiant. She pried the mercenary's comms unit from her pocket, a sleek black earpiece. She'd swiped mid-escape and tuned it, static crackling before Hayes' voice cut through, barking coordinates to his crew. She pinpointed his hideout, a corner of the warehouse 50 yards west, and whispered, "Got you." She thought she could turn this, broadcast his location, end his reign before he struck again. She dialed Ortiz on the burner, her voice a hoarse asp. "He's at Tacoma, warehouse off 54th. Send SWAT now." Ortiz promised backup, and Amara staggered to her feet. The city's hum distant, believing she'd outsmarted him. That help was minutes away. She crept down the stairs, her sneakers silent on the concrete, and found a rusted vent overlooking the warehouse floor. Hayes' silhouette sharp against flickering lights. He paced, a laptop open, wires snaking to a device she couldn't make, out his mercenaries guarding exits. She patched the comms into her phone, broadcasting his position live to Ortiz, the signal weak but holding. Suspect at 47.6231N, 122.3341W, armed and active. Sirens wailed faintly, SWAT closing in, and she thought, this is it, he's trapped. She slipped outside, rain soaking her, and hobbled to a payphone 2 blocks away, calling a news station, her voice steady despite the pain. Chief Brooks here. Hayes is cornered in Tacoma. Tell the world. The story hit airwaves. Fugitive, pilot tracked by Chief, and she sank against the booth, blood pooling at her feet, believing she'd flipped the hunt, that justice was barreling toward him. Then a blast shook the earth, a fireball erupting 10 miles north, the sky glowing orange as screams pierced the night, a commuter plane crashing into SeaTac's tarmac, 50 lives snuffed out in a heartbeat. Hayes had triggered it. A bomb, rigged in a Horizon Jet's cargo hold, planted days ago, detonated remotely as SWAT neared his lair. He stepped from the warehouse, his sweater drenched, and dialed a contact, his voice cold. Blame her vendetta. She did this. Within minutes, news flipped. Chief Brooks's Revenge Downs plane, fake logs surfacing, claiming she'd ordered the strike to frame Hayes. Public rage ignited, her face on screens. Terrorist cop kills 50, the city's trust, shattering as protests clogged streets. Hang her scrawled on signs. Amara stared at the payphone's TV, the anchor's voice a hammer, her victory torched by his slaughter. She stumbled back to the warehouse, her shoulder throbbing, determined to stop him, to prove it was him. She slipped inside. The mercenaries, gone. SWAT stalled by the crash and found his setup, a second bomb ticking on a crate wired to a timer 10 minutes left. She knelt, her hands shaking, and cut the red wire with a pocket knife, the clock stopping at 9 seconds, sweat beading on her brow. She thought she'd saved more lives, that this would clear her name, her breath steadying as she rose, the device inert in her grasp. Then the lights died, a citywide blackout plunging Seattle into darkness, horns blaring, chaos erupting as Hayes' voice boomed over hacked airwaves, a pre-recorded loop from his laptop. She'll pay for crossing me. This is her doing. He'd flipped the grid, a backup plan triggered when the bomb failed, power stations sabotaged with his code, pinning it on her again. Streetlights winked out, hospitals scrambled, and news vans screamed. Brooks blacks out Seattle. Amara froze, the warehouse pitch black, her triumph over the bomb erased by his next blow, the city's pulse flatlining under his lie. She stumbled outside, the rain a cold slap, sirens drowned by panic, and saw his shadow vanish into the night, his mercenaries covering his escape. Her shoulder bled anew, her legs buckling, but she clenched her fists, the comms unit crackling in her pocket. Ortiz's voice faint. Chief, we're pinned at the crash. Where are you? She couldn't answer, the weight crashing down. Hayes' wrath a tidal wave she couldn't outrun. Her desperate counterstrike drowned in his relentless carnage. Amara Brooks staggered through Tacoma's rain-slicked streets, the blackout's darkness swallowing the city, her shoulder a pulsing ache as blood soaked her hoodie, the comms unit silent in her pocket. Seattle reeled, horns blaring, emergency, lights flickering in the distance. Hayes' bombing and grid sabotage pinning her as the villain, 50 dead at SeaTac. Her name cursed on every tongue. She found a payphone, its glass cracked, and dialed Tyrell, her voice raw. Jamal safe? His reply steadied her. He's here, Chief. Cops are everywhere, but he's good. She hung up, her breath fogging in the cold, and broke into an abandoned hardware store, its shelves bare to patch her wound with duct tape and a rag, her hands trembling but precise. She hacked a precinct server via a dusty computer, tracing the blackout's origin to a substation Hayes had rigged, his bomb signature, ammonium nitrate traces, matching the plane crash. She sent it to Ortiz. Proof it's him, not me, and power flickered back on hours later, her evidence forcing the grid's reboot. The FBI swooped in, Hayes linked to terror acts, and she thought, They've got him now. I can breathe. She reunited with Jamal at Terrell's garage, the city's lights buzzing alive, and hugged him, his frame tense but unharmed, her relief a fragile thread. News shifted. Chief Brooks cleared. Hayes hunted. The FBI closing on his trail. Her precinct, rallying to back her. She drove to headquarters, a squat brick fortress downtown, to coordinate. Her blazer swapped for a spare uniform from Tyrell's stash, stars gleaming on her shoulders. Ortiz met her. "We've got his last ping, a hideout near Everett. SWAT's rolling." Amara nodded, her resolve iron, thinking she'd cornered him, that the end was near. Then her phone lit up, a live stream from an unknown link, Hayes' face filling the screen, his sweater torn, his eyes wild. Behind him, Jamal knelt, hands bound, a gun to his head. A mock execution staged in a dim basement. Live, Chief's son pays. Her heart seized, the room spinning, and she yelled, "No!" Ortiz traced it. "Everett, 10 miles out." Amara, bolted, keys snatched, her SUV roaring north, the feed looping Hayes' snarl, "Surrender or he dies." She hit Everett in 20 minutes, tires screeching, the hideout a crumbling mill by the Snohomish River, its windows boarded, the stream's audio crackling through her phone. She kicked the door, gun drawn from a precinct stash, and stormed in, the air thick with mold and fear. Hayes stood on a catwalk, Jamal gagged below, his college hoodie ripped, a mercenary aiming a pistol. "Drop it," Amara shouted, her voice a thunderclap, and Hayes laughed. "You're too late." She fired a warning shot, the bullet pinging, steel and charged, tackling the mercenary as Hayes fled, her training a blur of muscle memory. She disarmed him, snapping the gun's slide with a twist, and cut Jamal free, his sobs muffled as she pulled the gag. "You're safe," she whispered, trading herself in his place, hands raised as Hayes reappeared, a detonator in his grip. "You lose," he sneered, but she lunged, knocking it free, the device skittering across concrete, her shoulders screaming as she pinned him, thinking she'd saved her son, ended the nightmare. Then sirens wailed, SWAT breaching the precinct back in Seattle, a trap Hayes had set before fleeing, planted evidence, a forged order in her name, unleashing chaos. 2 officers died in the raid, a flashbang igniting a gas leak, the blast, rocking downtown, Chief's negligence kills cops flashing on news vans outside the mill. Hayes slipped her grasp, the detonator a decoy, and vanished into the night, his mercenaries covering with smoke grenades, his voice echoing. "I'll bury you yet." Amara stumbled out, Jamal beside her, the mill's walls trembling, and saw the feed shift, her precinct in flames, her victory gutted by his final blow. She was cuffed on sight, feds swarming, arrested for precinct deaths, her sacrifice for. Jamal twisted into carnage, Hayes' wrath a relentless tide she couldn't stem. Amara Brooks sat in a Seattle PD holding cell, the concrete walls cold against her back, her uniform torn and bloodied from the mill fight, her shoulder a throbbing mess beneath duct-taped rags. The cuffs bit into her wrists, chaining her to a steel ring, the precinct attack, 2 officers dead, pinned on her through Hayes' forged order, her arrest a public spectacle as news vans circled outside. Jamal was safe, whisked to Tyrell's garage by Ortiz, but the weight of the fallen crushed her, their faces flashing in her mind. Cops she'd led, lost to Hayes' vengeance. Her phone confiscated, buzzed with updates she couldn't see, until a rookie cop, a wiry kid named Ellis, slipped her a burner through the bars, whispering, "Feds found a mole, Chief. Hayes prints on the precinct leak. You're clear." She gripped the device, Ortiz's voice crackling through. "We've got his trail. An airfield near Renton. He's running." Released on the mole's exposure, she bolted, her blazer swapped for a borrowed jacket, and drove a precinct cruiser. South, the city's lights a blur, her resolve a blade honed by fury. She thought, "This ends tonight. He's mine." The Renton airfield sprawled under a moonless sky, a patchwork of hangars and runways, its edges fringed by skeletal trees. Amara parked a mile out, her boots sinking into muddy grass, and trekked. In the burner tracking Hayes' signal, a ping from a hangar's edge. She spotted him, his sweater swapped for a flight jacket, loading a Cessna with duffels, fuel cans glinting in the hangar's dim glow. She thought she'd arrest him clean, cuff him before he fled, and crept closer, her gun drawn, the precinct's spare a cold weight in her hand. She kicked the hangar door, its clang echoing, and shouted, "Hayes, it's over!" He spun, his eyes wild, and bolted for the plane, igniting the engine, the prop whirring to life. She fired, the bullet shattering a wing light, but he taxied out, the Cessna lurching onto the runway, her chance slipping. She sprinted, lungs burning, and leapt onto the wing as it rolled, her fingers clawing metal, thinking she'd stop him, mid-flight, drag him to justice. Hayes gunned the throttle, the plane lifting, her grip slipping as wind tore at her jacket, but she hauled herself into the open cockpit door, tumbling beside him. He snarled, "You're dead!" and banked hard. The Cessna shuddering, aiming for a fuel depot 500 yards off, a cluster of tanks gleaming in the dark. She lunged, wrestling the yoke, her shoulder screaming, and the plane veered, crashing into the depot's edge, metal screeching as it plowed through pipes, fuel erupting in a roaring blaze. The impact threw her against the dash, glass shattering, flames licking the fuselage, dozens of workers fleeing as the depot burned, a secondary blast killing 10 in a fiery wave. Hayes crawled free, his leg bloodied, and pulled a pistol, firing wild, the shot ripping through Amara's thigh, blood pooling fast. She hit the ground, pain blinding, and he loomed, gloating, "You lose, Chief!" Thinking he'd won, her body broken amidst the wreckage, sirens wailing distant. Amara gritted her teeth, the fire's heat searing her face, and spotted a jagged shard of wing metal, its edge glinting in the inferno. She grabbed it, her hand slick with blood, and stabbed upward, driving it into Hayes's calf, his scream, piercing the chaos as he stumbled. She rolled, snatching his dropped gun, and kicked his knee, toppling him into the mud. "Not yet," she gasped, cuffing him with her free hand, the steel snapping shut, her thigh pulsing, vision fading. He thrashed, spitting, "You'll rot for this!" But she held firm, the flames roaring, both near death as the blaze closed in. Sirens screamed closer, medics and feds swarming, pulling them from the inferno. Her grip on Hayes unrelenting. Their final stand a brutal draw in a war neither could win unscathed. Amara Brooks lay in a hospital bed at Harborview Medical Center, the antiseptic sting sharp in her nose, her thigh bandaged tight where Hayes's bullet had torn through, her shoulders stitched from the warehouse graze, the beep of monitors a steady pulse in the sterile room. Medics had pulled her and Hayes from the Renton airfield inferno 2 nights ago, the fuel depot's blaze claiming 10 lives, her cuffing him a fleeting triumph etched in blood and fire. She'd stabilized, her vitals strong, and watched news flicker on a wall-mounted TV, Chief Brooks captures terror pilot, the crash replaying in loops, her face a mask of grit amidst the flames. Hayes survived too, his calf pierced by her shard, leg shattered in the wreck, now shackled to a bed 3 floors down under guard. The Fed swooped in, his arrest warrant stacking, assault, arson, bombing, murder, and her precinct rallied, Ortiz delivering evidence to prosecutors, the mole's confession sealing his fate. Amara thought justice was locked, that Hayes's empire would crumble in court, her fight finally won. She sat up, wincing, and prepped for trial, her attorney, Elise Tran, briefing her via phone. "We've got him, Amara. Testimonies, forensics, it's airtight." She nodded, her jaw set, believing the end was near. 4 weeks later, courtroom, 7A buzzed with tension, a wood-paneled chamber in Seattle's federal courthouse, its benches packed with press, cops, and gawkers, the air thick with anticipation. Amara sat at the witness stand, her uniform crisp, stars gleaming, her thigh stiff but steady, a cane propped beside her. Hayes slumped at the defense table, his flight jacket swapped for a gray suit, his face gaunt, leg in a brace, his defiance a flicker beneath the exhaustion. Judge Clara Henshaw, a stern woman with silver hair and 30 years on the bench, presided, her gavel a sharp crack as proceedings began. Amara testified, her voice clear, recounting every blow. Hayes's slap on Flight 927, the arson at her home, Jamal's framing, the precinct deaths, the airfield crash, each word backed by videos, forensics, Marcus's bruised survival, prosecutors piled on, passengers from the plane, Ortiz with bomb residue, Terrell with Jamal's alibi, A mountain of proof burying Hayes. His lawyer, a slick man named Gerald Voss, scribbled notes, his smirk faint, and Amara thought, "He's got nothing. This is over." The gallery nodded, reporters typed. The feds poised to seal his life sentence, her legacy as chief restored. Then Voss stood, his voice smooth as oil. "Your Honor, we have evidence that shifts this narrative." He clicked a remote, a screen, descending and played a video, grainy but sharp, dated 3 years prior. Amara in a precinct lot, slapping a handcuffed suspect, a white man, her hand striking his cheek after he spat at her. Gasps rippled, her breath catching, the moment real but twisted. Disciplinary records showed she'd been cleared, a justified response to aggression, but Voss spun it. "She's the aggressor here, a pattern of violence." She slapped Hayes. First on that plane provoked him. The courtroom erupted, Amara's eyes widening. The lie a sledgehammer, her memory scrambling. That's not what happened. Hayes sat up, his grin creeping back, the doctored tale flipping her into the villain. The slap on Flight 927 now her fault, his assault a reaction. Jurors shifted, whispers grew, and Judge Henshaw banged her gavel. "Order!" Amara protested. "That's manipulated. Check the flight footage." But Voss countered. "Lost in the crash, Your Honor. This stands." Her career teetered, the room spinning, Hayes' final twist threatening to bury her in disgrace. Her victory snatched by his last venomous play. Elise leapt up. "Objection! This is irrelevant, fabricated!" But Henshaw peered over her glasses. "I'll allow it. Proceed." Amara's pulse raced, her hands clenching the cane, the gallery's faith wavering, reporters pivoting, chief's violent past exposed. She thought she'd lost, Hayes' lie outmaneuvering truth, until Jamal in the back row slipped a laptop to Ortiz, his fingers flying, a hack into Hayes' burner cloud, a file he'd pulled from the airfield wreckage. Ortiz patched it to the courtroom projector overriding Voss, and Hayes' voice boomed, a secret recording from their cockpit fight. "I slapped you first, framed your kid, burned it all. You're nothing, Chief." Silence fell, jaws dropping, Hayes' face draining white, his confession raw, unfiltered, captured when she'd stabbed him. "The comms unit live in her pocket," Voss stammered. "That's inadmissible." But Henshaw snapped. "It's authenticated by timecode. Sit down." The reversal hit like lightning, Amara's breath steadying, her name cleared in a heartbeat. Hayes' empire shattered beyond repair. Henshaw deliberated, her verdict swift. Leonard Hayes, guilty on all counts, assault, terrorism, murder, life without parole. His head dropped, cuffs clanking as guards hauled him out. His pilot's legacy ash, Horizon Airlines bankrupt under lawsuits, a $40 million settlement for victims sealed that week. Amara stood, the cane a quiet prop, the gallery erupting. In applause, Hero Chief prevails. She limped out, Jamal at her side. The courthouse steps swarmed by press, her stars catching sunlight, but her eyes were hollow, the cost etched in her scars. Her home, her officers, her trust in the system. "Torched!" she addressed the crowd. "Justice isn't victory, it's survival." Her voice soft, final, and resigned her badge that day, retiring to a quiet cabin on Puget Sound. The city's reforms, blind ticketing, bias training. Her legacy, not her burden. Hayes rotted in a cell, his wings clipped, but Amara walked away, alive, unbroken. The fight done. This story of Amara Brooks and Captain Leonard Hayes reveals profound lessons about resilience, systemic bias, and the cost of justice. First, it shows that courage isn't just facing physical threats, but enduring relentless injustice. Amara's fight against Hayes' escalating attacks, from a slap to bombings, proves strength lies in refusing to break. Her journey underscores how prejudice can twist power, with Hayes wielding his authority to target her race, a stark reminder that systems often shield the privileged until challenged head-on. Second, truth's fragility stands out. Hayes' lies nearly buried Amara, highlighting how easily narratives can shift without evidence and vigilance. Her survival hinged on seizing proof, passenger videos, Jamal's hack, teaching us to document and fight for reality, not just accept it. Third, betrayal cuts deepest from within. Marcus's turn showed trust's vulnerability, yet Amara's forgiveness amid chaos reflects grace under fire. Finally, justice isn't clean. 10 died at the airfield, her precinct burned, and she retired, scarred, proving victory can taste like ash when the cost is so high. It's a call to question who pays for systemic flaws and to push for change, not just punishment. What hits home for you? Comment below if you faced a fight like Amara's, hit like if her grit inspires you, and subscribe for more tales of battling the odds. Share this to spark conversations about standing up. Thanks for joining this wild ride. May you find strength to face your own storms and build a fairer world.